They say a mother's love is unconditional. I proved that for 75 years. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes the child you die for will be the one who buries you alive. My name is Gloria, and my son destroyed my life for money I never touched, crimes I never committed, and a fortune that never existed. This is the story of how I made him pay. Before I tell you how my own flesh and blood threw me into hell, hit that subscribe button right now. You need to hear every single word of what happened next, and trust me, you won't believe where this story goes. Now let me take you back to the day my world ended. I was sitting in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made breakfast for my son Travis for 18 years, when the police kicked down my door. Not knocked. Kicked. Like I was some kind of dangerous criminal. 6 officers stormed in, guns drawn, screaming at me to get on the ground. Me, a 75-year-old woman who'd never even gotten a parking ticket. Gloria Bennet, you under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering, the lead officer shouted. My hands shook as they cuffed them behind my back. There must be some mistake. I don't understand. Tell it to the judge, lady. They dragged me out of my home in my nightgown. My neighbors stood on their porches, phones out, recording. Mrs. Patterson, who I'd known for 40 years, actually smiled. That hurt almost as much as the metal cutting into my wrists. They threw me into the back of that police car like garbage, and I still had no idea what was happening. At the station, they sat me in a cold room with cameras in every corner. The detective slid a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements, forged documents, and signatures that looked exactly like mine but weren't. Someone had been stealing from the community center where I volunteered, funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars into offshore accounts supposedly registered in my name. I didn't do this, I whispered, staring at the papers. I don't even know how to open an offshore account. The evidence says otherwise, Gloria. We've got paper trails, digital footprints, everything. You've been running this scheme for 3 years. 3 years? I've been volunteering at that center for free, helping kids, feeding families. Why would I steal from my own community? The detective leaned back in his chair. People do crazy things for money, especially when they think they won't get caught. Then came the punch that knocked the air from my lungs. Your son Travis reported you. He's the one who discovered the discrepancies and brought them to our attention. He's been cooperating with our investigation for 6 months. My son, my baby boy, the child I raised alone after his father walked out, the boy I worked 3 jobs to put through college. Travis had turned me in. But why? What did he have to gain from destroying me? I found out soon enough. At my bail hearing, which I couldn't afford anyway, the prosecutor painted me as a monster who preyed on vulnerable people. They denied bail, called me a flight risk. I was sent to county jail to await trial, and that's where I stayed for 8 months before my court date. Prison is different when you're 75. The younger women looked at me with confusion at first, then with contempt when they learned what I was accused of. Even criminals have codes. Stealing from kids and poor families. That made me lower than dote in their eyes. I got letters from Travis during those months. Want to know what they said? He told me he was sorry. Sorry that I'd made him do this. Sorry that I'd forced his hand by being so greedy. Sorry that I'd embarrassed the family. Every letter was a knife twisting deeper into my heart. He actually believed I'd done it. Or at least, that's what he wanted me to think he believed. But here's what I learned in those cold, dark months. I learned that my son wasn't just reporting a crime. He was committing one. See, Travis worked at the community center too, in the finance department. He had access to everything. He knew the systems, knew the accounts, knew exactly how to make it look like someone else had stolen that money. And he chose me because who would suspect a grieving mother trying to protect her innocent son? The real blow came during the trial. Travis took the stand and cried. Actually cried real tears as he testified against me. He told the jury how he'd discovered the theft, how he'd confronted me, how I'd begged him to stay quiet. Every word was a lie wrapped in fake emotion. The jury ate it up. My public defender was fresh out of law school, overwhelmed and underprepared. We had no resources to investigate, no money for forensic accountants or computer experts who might have proven the documents were forged. It was my word against a mountain of manufactured evidence and my son's Academy Award performance. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the forewoman wouldn't look at me. Guilty on all counts. The judge gave me 15 years. 15 years at 75 years old. That was a death sentence, and everyone in that courtroom knew it. As they led me away, I looked back at Travis one last time. He wasn't crying anymore. He was checking his phone, probably calculating how long until he could access what remained of my pension and sell my house. That's when something inside me died. Not hope, not love, but fear. I stopped being afraid of what would happen to me and started focusing on what was going to happen to him. Because if I was going down for crimes I didn't commit, I was going to make absolutely certain that the person who actually committed them would pay a price that made prison look like paradise. They transferred me to a maximum security facility 3 hours from the city. My cellmate was a woman named Tamika who'd been inside for 12 years. She was smart, connected, and curious about the old lady who'd supposedly stolen from charity. "So did you do it?" she asked me on my first night. "No," I said simply. "My son did." Then he framed me for it. Tamika sat up on her bunk, interested now. "Your own son? That's cold. Real cold. What are you going to do about it?" I looked at her in the darkness. "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." "Well," Tamika said with a slight laugh, "you came to the right place to learn how to make someone disappear without actually killing them. Women in here know things. And some of us still have friends on the outside who owe us favors." That conversation changed everything. I wasn't just going to survive prison. I was going to use it. Because my son had made one critical mistake when he sent me here. He assumed I would break. He assumed I would die quietly, another old woman crushed by the system. What he didn't know was that Gloria Bennet had survived poverty, racism, an absent husband, and 75 years of this cruel world. Prison was just one more challenge. And unlike him, I didn't quit when things got hard. I had 15 years to plan, but I wouldn't need nearly that long. Prison teaches you things they don't cover in Sunday school. Within my first month, I learned more about human nature, survival, and the art of patience than I had in my entire life. The women inside weren't all monsters. Some were mothers like me, caught in systems designed to crush them. Others were genuine criminals who'd made peace with their choices. And a few were something else entirely, connected. Tamika became my guide through this concrete jungle. She introduced me to women who ran entire operations from behind bars. Drug networks, protection rackets, information brokers. I watched and listened, never speaking unless spoken to, absorbing everything like a sponge soaking up poison to turn it into medicine later. "You're different from the others," said a woman named Rochelle during lunch one day. She was 43, serving 25 years for armed robbery, but she had the bearing of a CEO. "Most people your age come in here and just wait to die. You're watching. Loaning. Why?" I set down my tray and looked her directly in the eyes. "Because my son put me here for money he stole. He's out there living my life while I rot in here for his crimes. And I'm going to make him wish he'd never been born." Rochelle smiled, a slow spread of satisfaction across her face. "Now that's the kind of energy I can respect. What's your timeline?" "I have 15 years on paper, but I'm 75. Realistically, I have maybe 5 good years if I'm lucky." "Then we better work fast. Tell me everything." Over the next weeks, I told Rochelle the whole story. How Travis had access to the community center accounts. How the signatures on the documents were forged but good enough to fool a cursory investigation. How he'd testified against me with manufactured evidence. How he'd written me those poisonous letters pretending to be the wounded son of a criminal mother. Rochelle listened to every detail, asking questions a detective would ask. She had me draw timelines, remember dates, recall every interaction with Travis in the months before my arrest. Then she made some phone calls. See, Rochelle's brother was still on the outside. He wasn't exactly law-abiding, but he was loyal and he was smart. She explained my situation to him during her monitored call, speaking in a code they developed over years. To anyone listening, they were discussing family recipes and church gossip. But what she was really doing was setting up surveillance on my son. Your boy's gotten comfortable, Rochelle told me 2 weeks later. My brother's been watching him. Travis sold your house for $200,000, bought himself a luxury condo downtown. He's driving a BMW now, wearing expensive suits, dating a woman who thinks he's some kind of financial genius who saved the community center from his criminal mother. The rage that filled me was cold, not hot. Precise, not wild. What else? He's still working at the community center. Actually got promoted to director of finance. The board thinks he's a hero for exposing you. They gave him a raise and a glowing recommendation. He's become the face of integrity and family values, if you can believe that garbage. I could believe it. Travis always knew how to play a role. He learned from the best. I'd taught him to be charming, to read people, to understand what they wanted to hear. I'd raised him to be strong and smart. Never thought he'd use those skills to destroy me. I need to know everything he does, I said to Rochelle. Every transaction, every meeting, every person he talks to. Can your brother handle that? It'll cost. Information isn't free, even for a good cause. I have money, I said. Not the fortune Travis claims I stole, but I had savings. My sister Pauline on the outside. She has access. She believes me. She'll pay. That was true. My younger sister Pauline was the only family member who'd stood by me. She'd attended every day of my trial, written me every week, and sworn she'd help me however she could. When I called her that night during phone privileges, I told her what I needed. Gloria, what are you planning? Pauline asked, her voice tight with worry. Justice, I said simply. The courts wouldn't give it to me, so I'm going to take it myself. There was a long pause. Then Pauline said, tell me what you need me to do. My sister became my lifeline to the outside world. She paid Rochelle's brother, a man named Jerome, to become Travis's shadow. Every week, Pauline visited and brought me reports. Travis was living well off my destroyed reputation. He'd joined expensive clubs, taken vacations to places I'd never been, bought art and wine and all the status symbols of success. But Jerome found something else too. Travis was still stealing. The community center was hemorrhaging money again, but this time Travis had gotten smarter about hiding it. He'd learned from his mistakes in framing me. Now he was using cryptocurrency and shell corporations that were harder to trace. He'd taken $500,000 in the 18 months since I'd been locked up. He's gotten greedy, Rochelle observed when I shared this information. That's good for you. Greedy people make mistakes. How do I use that? I asked. Rochelle leaned in close during recreation time, her voice low. You don't go after him legally. That ship sailed, and you already know the system is rigged. You go after what he values. His reputation. His money. His peace of mind. You make him lose everything the same way he made you lose everything, but slower, more painful. I'm 75 years old in a maximum security prison. How exactly am I supposed to do that? You've got something Travis doesn't have anymore, Rochelle said with a knowing smile. You've got nothing left to lose. That makes you dangerous. And you've got friends in here who have friends out there. Women who owe favors, who have skills, who understand that sometimes the law isn't justice. You just need to be patient and strategic. She was right. Over the next months, I met women with all kinds of expertise. Keisha had been an accountant before she got caught embezzling from her employer. She taught me about financial systems, how money really moves, how to spot the patterns of theft. Nicole had worked in IT and understood computers, cryptocurrency, digital trails. She explained how Travis was probably moving his stolen money, But the most valuable person I met was an older woman named Brenda. She was 68, serving life for killing her abusive husband after 40 years of torture. Brenda had wisdom that came from suffering, and she understood revenge in a way that transcended simple payback. You want him to hurt the way you hurt. Brenda asked me during one of our conversations in the prison yard. Yes, I admitted. Then you can't just take his money or expose his crimes. Anyone can do that. You need to take his soul. You need to make him feel the exact betrayal, the exact isolation, the exact helplessness that he made you feel. You need him to know that the person he trusted most in the world was the one who destroyed him, just like he did to you. How? I asked, desperate for guidance. Brenda looked at the sky, at the razor wire cutting across the clouds. Who does he love? Who does he trust? I thought about that. Travis had always been selfish, even as a child. He didn't form deep attachments easily. But there was one person, his girlfriend, Amanda. Jerome says he's serious about her, talking about marriage. Then that's your entry point, Brenda said. You get to her. You turn her. You make her the instrument of his destruction. And when it's all over, you make sure he knows it was you. That his own mother reached out from prison and dismantled his entire life piece by piece. That's real revenge. The plan started forming in my mind. It would take time, coordination, and resources I didn't have easy access to. But I had something more valuable than money or freedom. I had focus. I had motivation. And I had a network of women who understood that sometimes you have to become the monster people already think you are. Pauline became my messenger to the outside world. Jerome became my eyes and ears on Travis. And inside these walls, I assembled a team of women with specific skills, each one motivated by her own reasons to help. Some wanted money, which Pauline provided from my dwindling savings. Others wanted the satisfaction of helping take down a man who represented every privileged person who'd escaped justice while they rotted in cages. We started gathering information on Amanda. She was 32, worked in marketing, came from a middle-class family. She believed Travis's story about his heroic exposure of his criminal mother. She had no idea she was dating a thief and a liar who'd framed his own parent. She's the weak link, Nicole observed, looking at the photos Jerome had taken. She's not sophisticated enough to see through him yet. And she has a conscience. Look at her social media. She volunteers, she donates, she cares about justice and doing the right thing. Perfect, I said. Then we're going to give her the truth. And we're going to let her conscience do the work for us. But I couldn't just have Amanda contacted directly. That would seem suspicious, coordinated. It had to feel organic, accidental, like she stumbled onto the truth herself. That required patience and precision. Keisha came up with the financial angle. We get someone to pose as an auditor or investigator looking into community center finances. Not officially, just privately. Someone approaching Amanda like they need her help because they are worried about irregularities. Women like her want to be heroes. Give her the chance to be one. It was risky. If Amanda went straight to Travis, the whole plan would collapse. But Brenda reminded me that revenge requires risk. You can't hurt him without exposing yourself to danger. That's the price. Question is, are you willing to pay it? I looked around at the concrete walls, the bars, the guards, the women in jumpsuits who'd become my unlikely family. I'd already paid the highest price. What did I have left to lose? Set it up, I told them. Let's start taking my son apart. Jerome found the perfect person to approach Amanda. Her name was Simone, a private investigator who'd worked with Rochelle's family before. She was expensive, professional, and most importantly, she could play the role we needed. Simone agreed to pose as a concerned former donor to the community center who'd noticed financial irregularities and wanted to investigate quietly before going public. The setup had to be perfect. Simone spent 2 weeks studying the community center's public records, learning the layout, understanding the programs. She needed to seem legitimate, knowledgeable, genuinely concerned. Then she engineered a meeting with Amanda at a coffee shop near her office. Pauline brought me the report during her next visit. Jerome says Simone made contact yesterday. She approached Amanda like it was casual, said she recognized her from Travis's social media. Started talking about the community center, how wonderful the programs are, how tragic it was about Travis's mother. Then she dropped the hook. What did she say? I asked, leaning forward. She said she'd been reviewing some public financial documents for a research project and noticed some patterns that concerned her. Nothing accusatory, just curious. Asked if Amanda knew anything about how the center's finances were managed now that the previous scandal had been handled. Made it seem like she was worried about protecting the center's reputation. And Amanda took the bait. Not immediately. She was defensive at first, protective of Travis. But Simone planted the seed. She gave Amanda her card, said if she ever wanted to talk about it confidentially, she'd be happy to help protect the center and Travis's good name. Then she left. It was a good start, but not enough. Amanda needed to come to conclusions on her own, or she'd never believe them. We needed to give her breadcrumbs, not a full meal. Over the next month, Simone sent Amanda carefully crafted emails. Nothing aggressive, just gentle questions. Had the board ever done an independent audit? Were the financial controls stronger now? Did Travis ever talk about the technical details of how his mother had committed the fraud? Each email was designed to make Amanda think, to plant tiny doubts that would grow like weeds in her mind. Meanwhile, I was learning everything I could about financial crime from Keisha. She taught me how to spot the patterns Travis was likely using to steal the new money, the timing of transfers, the amounts just below reporting thresholds, the way cryptocurrency could be moved through multiple wallets to obscure the trail. Your son's not as smart as he thinks, Keisha said, looking at the information Jerome had gathered. He's using the same patterns he used before, probably because it worked so well the first time. He's gotten comfortable, confident. That's when people get caught. Except he won't get caught through normal channels, I said bitterly. He's too protected now. Everyone thinks he's a hero. Then we make him catch himself. We make him paranoid. We make him sloppy. And we use Amanda to do it. The plan evolved. Simone would gradually feed Amanda information that would lead her to discover Travis's current theft on her own. But we had to be careful. If it seemed too convenient, Amanda might suspect manipulation. It had to feel like her investigation, her discovery, her heroism. Nicole provided the technical piece. She had a friend on the outside, a hacker named Destiny who could do things with computers that seemed like magic to me. Destiny created a fake whistleblower website that appeared to be run by concerned employees of various nonprofits sharing information about financial irregularities they'd witnessed. We post anonymous tips about the community center on this site, Nicole explained. Nothing specific enough to identify us, but detailed enough to seem credible. Then Simone mentions the site to Amanda in passing, like she stumbled across it while researching. Amanda visits, sees the posts, starts wondering if there's something to investigate. It was elaborate, maybe too elaborate. But Brenda reminded me that complex plans work when they are built on simple human psychology. Amanda wants to believe Travis is good. But she also wants to be a person who stands up for what's right. We're just giving her the opportunity to reconcile those two desires. When she finally discovers the truth, she'll feel like she got there herself. That's what makes it powerful. The website went live in March. Simone mentioned it to Amanda in April. By May, Jerome reported that Amanda had started asking Travis casual questions about the center's finances. Nothing suspicious, just curious girlfriend stuff. How did the accounting work? What systems did they use? How did they prevent what happened with his mother from happening again? Travis apparently loved talking about it. He saw it as an opportunity to play the expert, the hero who'd rebuilt trust. He had no idea he was feeding his girlfriend information she was quietly verifying against public records and the anonymous posts on that whistleblower site. Then came the breakthrough. Amanda found a discrepancy. A small one, probably an accident on Travis's part, but enough to make her curious. Jerome watched her arrive at the community center one evening after hours. She had access because of her relationship with Travis. She spent 3 hours in the office, looking at files, taking photos with her phone. She's hooked, Rochelle said when I got the news. Now we just have to reel her in carefully. Too fast and she snaps the line. Too slow and she loses interest. But Amanda didn't lose interest. Over the next weeks, she dug deeper. She started comparing the center's expenses against similar nonprofits. She noticed patterns that matched the old theft attributed to me. She saw the cryptocurrency transactions that Nicole had predicted. Simone kept in contact, always supportive, never pushing, just a concerned citizen who wanted to protect the center. When Amanda finally reached out to Simone with her concerns, we knew we had her. She's scared, Pauline told me during our visit. Jerome says Amanda doesn't want to believe Travis is stealing, but the evidence is right there in front of her. She asked Simone what she should do. Should she go to the police? Should she confront Travis? Should she tell the board? What did Simone tell her? I asked. To gather more evidence first. To be absolutely certain before making any accusations. To protect herself legally. All good advice that happens to give us more time to prepare the next phase. The next phase was the cruelest part. We needed Amanda to discover not just that Travis was stealing, but that he'd framed me. That the loving son who'd heroically exposed his criminal mother was actually the criminal himself. That revelation had to come from an unimpeachable source, or she'd never believe it. Keisha found the answer in the original financial documents from my case. Look at the timestamps on these transfers, she said, pointing to the evidence that had convicted me. Some of them happened when you were provably somewhere else. You were at a hospital appointment. Remember? You told me about your hip surgery consultation. I did remember. It was 2 years before my arrest, on a Tuesday afternoon. I'd waited 3 hours to see the orthopedic surgeon. I'd been frustrated because I'd had to take time off from my volunteer work at the center. The hospital records will show you were there, Keisha continued. Medical records are time-stamped, verified. If we can get those records to Amanda, show her that some of the theft happened while you were literally in a doctor's office, she'll start questioning everything. But I couldn't get those records from prison. I'd need Pauline to request them, which she could do as my sister with my authorization. The question was how to get them to Amanda without seeming orchestrated. Simone provided the solution. I tell Amanda I've been doing deeper research into the original case against Gloria Bennet. That, as an investigator, something about it bothered me. The conviction seemed too clean, too perfect. I request the medical records as part of my private investigation, discover the alibi evidence, and share it with Amanda as a concerning development. It was risky. Amanda might go straight to Travis with this information. But Brenda believed Amanda's conscience would prevent that. She's already doubting him because of the current theft. When she sees evidence that he framed his own mother, she won't warn him. She'll be horrified. She'll want proof. And she'll start looking for more evidence of his guilt, not his innocence. We executed the plan in June. Pauline got my medical records from the hospital, showing my presence there during 3 of the key transactions that had been used to convict me. Simone shared them with Amanda, framed as a troubling discovery that raised questions about the integrity of the original investigation. Jerome reported that Amanda locked herself in her apartment for 2 days after seeing those records. She didn't answer Travis's calls. She didn't go to work. She just researched, compared, verified. And she cried. Because she was realizing that the man she loved, the man she was planning to marry, was capable of destroying his own mother for money. She's ready, Rochelle said. Now you need to decide how you want to use her. She could go to the police, get Travis arrested. But you said you didn't want lawyers and courts this time. You wanted aggressive, cold revenge. So what's the play? I'd been thinking about this for months. Arresting Travis would give me vindication, maybe even exoneration. But he'd just go to prison like I had. He'd do his time, eventually get out, maybe even write a book about his redemption. That wasn't enough. That wasn't justice. That wasn't revenge. I want him to lose everything first, I said slowly. His money, his reputation, his relationship, his freedom to enjoy any of it. I want him to feel the walls closing in like I felt. I want him paranoid, desperate, making mistakes. And then, when he's at his lowest point, I want him to know I did it. That his mother reached out from prison and orchestrated his complete destruction. Only then do we finish him. Brenda smiled her cold smile. Now you're thinking like someone who understands revenge. So let's start taking his world apart piece by piece. Amanda didn't go to the police. She did something smarter and more devastating. She started her own investigation, documenting everything, building an airtight case. Simone guided her, teaching her how to gather evidence that would hold up to scrutiny, how to protect herself legally, how to think like a prosecutor. But Amanda also did something we hadn't anticipated. She started sabotaging Travis from the inside. Small things at first, subtle enough that he wouldn't notice immediately. She'd mentioned to mutual friends that she had concerns about the community center's finances. She'd ask leading questions at social gatherings that made people look at Travis differently. She'd plant seeds of doubt in the minds of board members and donors. She's angry, Jerome reported. Not just hurt or disappointed. Genuinely furious. She believed in Travis, defended him to people who questioned their relationship. She told her parents he was the one. Now she feels like a fool, and she's channeling that into revenge of her own. This complicated things, but Rochelle saw the opportunity. 2 people taking down Travis is better than 1. Let Amanda think she's in control of her investigation. We'll coordinate behind the scenes to make sure her actions and our plans work together. She's going after his reputation and relationship. We're going after his money and freedom. Perfect division of labor. Through Simone, we fed Amanda information about Travis's cryptocurrency holdings. Nicole's friend Destiny had traced the stolen money through multiple wallets to offshore accounts. The amounts were staggering. Travis had stolen nearly $800,000 over 4 years, with almost half of that coming after he'd sent me to prison. Amanda used this information to create a detailed timeline. She cross-referenced it with Travis's lifestyle changes, his purchases, his trips. Everything matched. The BMW, the condo, the expensive clothes, the lavish vacations. All funded by theft from a charity that served the poorest people in our community. In August, Amanda made her move. She went to the community center's board chairman, a man named Gerald who'd been on the board for 20 years. She requested a private meeting and brought her evidence. All of it. The current theft, the cryptocurrency trails, and most damning, the medical records proving I couldn't have committed some of the crimes I'd been convicted of. Gerald was apparently shocked into silence. He'd trusted Travis completely. They all had. Travis was the hero who'd saved the center from his criminal mother. The idea that he was actually the criminal seemed impossible. But Amanda had receipts, timestamps, blockchain records, everything. What do you want me to do with this? Gerald asked her, according to what he later told others. I want you to hire a real forensic accountant, Amanda said. Someone with no connection to Travis or the center. Have them verify everything I've found. And if it's true, I want you to do the right thing. Not just fire him. Press charges. Make sure everyone knows what he did to his mother and to this community. Gerald agreed, but he made a mistake. He told another board member about Amanda's allegations. That board member was friends with Travis. Within 24 hours, Travis knew someone was investigating him. Jerome watched Travis spiral into panic. He called in sick to work. He spent hours on his computer, probably trying to move or hide money. He tried to reach Amanda, but she'd blocked his number. He showed up at her apartment, but she'd changed the locks and wasn't answering the door. He knows something's wrong, but he doesn't know how much, Rochelle analyzed. That's the worst kind of stress. The uncertainty will eat at him, make him sloppy. This is when we push harder. We activated the next phase. Simone anonymously tipped off a reporter at the local newspaper who'd covered my original trial. She sent him the same evidence Amanda had given Gerald, along with a note suggesting he might want to investigate whether the community center had a new theft problem or if the old theft had been blamed on the wrong person. The reporter started digging. He requested interviews with board members, reviewed public financial documents, and tried to contact Travis. When Travis refused to comment, the reporter made that part of his story. Travis Bennet, who famously exposed his mother's embezzlement scheme 4 years ago, declined to answer questions about new allegations of financial irregularities at the center. The article ran in September. It was carefully worded to avoid libel, but the implications were clear. Money was missing. Travis had access and opportunity. And there were questions about whether the original investigation had been thorough enough. The article mentioned my medical records and the alibi they provided for some of the transactions. The response was immediate and brutal. Social media exploded. People who'd praised Travis as a hero now questioned everything. The community center's donors demanded answers. The board hired the forensic accountant Amanda had suggested, and Travis found himself in exactly the position he'd put me in, publicly accused, presumed guilty, watching his life fall apart in real time. But we weren't done. Not even close. While Travis dealt with the public investigation, we went after his money. Destiny, Nicole's hacker friend, did something illegal but effective. She locked Travis out of his cryptocurrency wallets by changing the access credentials. She didn't steal the money, just made it temporarily inaccessible to him. Travis couldn't move it, couldn't hide it, couldn't spend it. He panicked harder. He tried to access the funds, failed, tried again. He called cryptocurrency exchanges, claiming he'd been hacked. They started their own investigations. And because Destiny had documented everything, those investigations led directly to evidence of the original theft and money laundering. Travis's lawyer told him to stop talking, stop trying to access the accounts, stop doing anything that could be used against him. But Travis was spiraling. He'd gotten comfortable with stealing, confident he'd never be caught. Now his entire world was collapsing and he had no idea who was behind it. That's when we decided it was time for him to know. I had Pauline send Travis a letter, not from me directly, that would raise questions about how I was coordinating all this from prison. Instead, she sent it as herself, his aunt, someone who'd always loved him but now felt betrayed and heartbroken. The letter said, "Travis, I know what you did. I know you framed Gloria. I know you're still stealing. I know everything. And I want you to know that your mother knows too. She's in prison because of your lies, but she's not broken. She's been watching you, learning about you, and now she's coming for everything you took from her. You should have let her die in peace. Now she's going to make sure you never have peace again." Jerome watched Travis receive that letter. He said Travis read it 3 times, then vomited in his kitchen sink. Because he finally understood. His mother wasn't just a victim he'd successfully framed. She was an active threat, coordinating his destruction from behind bars. Travis tried to visit me. He called the prison, requested to be put on my visitor list. I denied the request. He sent me letters. I returned them unopened. He wanted to know what I knew, what I was planning, how I was doing any of this. The uncertainty was killing him worse than any confrontation would. The forensic accountant's report came back in October. It confirmed everything Amanda had found. Travis had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars. The cryptocurrency trails were clear. And most damning, the report included a section comparing the current theft patterns to the old ones attributed to me. They were identical because they were committed by the same person. The board fired Travis immediately. They held a press conference. They apologized to the community and to me. They announced they were cooperating with law enforcement and would be filing a formal request for my case to be reviewed. Travis's world was ashes. He lost his job, his reputation, his girlfriend, and his access to the money he'd stolen. But he still wasn't in handcuffs. The legal process would take time. Investigations, evidence gathering, building a case. Months, maybe years before he faced trial. I didn't want to wait years. I was 7 to 6 now. I'd been in prison for nearly 2 years. I wanted Travis to suffer sooner, harder, more personally. What's his worst fear? Brendo asked me. What would destroy him more than prison? I thought about that. Travis had always been proud, image-conscious, desperate for approval and respect. Prison would be bad, but he'd survive it. He was young, adaptable. What he couldn't survive was public humiliation combined with poverty and complete isolation. He needs to lose everything, I said. Not just his job and reputation. Everything. His home, his possessions, his social connections, his belief in his own intelligence. I want him to end up exactly where he put me. Alone, broken, and helpless. Then let's finish this, Rochelle said. No more playing around. We go for the throat. Destiny went from locking Travis's cryptocurrency accounts to systematically dismantling his entire financial life. She was careful, methodical, and ruthlessly efficient. First, she documented every stolen dollar, every fraudulent transaction, every lie Travis had built his fortune on. Then she sent that documentation to every relevant authority. The IRS received detailed records of unreported income. The state tax authority got the same. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division received evidence of wire fraud and money laundering. The cryptocurrency exchanges got proof that Travis had violated their terms of service. Each agency started its own investigation, each one adding to the pressure crushing Travis from all sides. But the real devastation came when Destiny froze his legitimate assets too. She filed fraudulent claims against his accounts, flagging them for investigation. The banks locked his access while they verified the claims. His credit cards stopped working. His mortgage payment bounced. His utility bills went unpaid. Within 3 weeks, Travis went from comfortable to desperate. He couldn't access any of his money, stolen or earned. He couldn't pay his bills. His condo went into pre-foreclosure. His BMW got repossessed. He had to move in with a friend who still believed his claims of being innocent. Amanda made sure that didn't last long. She'd been posting on social media, carefully sharing her story of discovering her boyfriend was a criminal who'd framed his own mother. She never mentioned Travis by name, but everyone knew who she was talking about. Her posts went viral. Thousands of people shared them, commented, expressed their horror and sympathy. The friend who'd taken Travis and started getting questions. Why was he harboring a thief? Did he know what Travis had done? Was he complicit? The pressure became too much. He asked Travis to leave. Travis ended up in a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind of place that rents by the week and doesn't ask questions. Jerome watched him deteriorate. He stopped shaving, stopped showering regularly, stopped maintaining any pretense of normalcy. He'd gone from BMW driving condo owner to broken in less than 2 months. The legal pressures intensified. The district attorney announced they were reviewing my case based on new evidence. They stopped short of exonerating me immediately, but they acknowledged serious questions about the integrity of the original investigation. That announcement made national news. The story of the son who framed his mother became a cable news obsession. Travis couldn't hide anymore. Reporters found him at the motel. They filmed him looking disheveled and desperate. They asked him questions he refused to answer. His silence looked like guilt. The footage aired on every major network. My son, who'd sent me to prison while presenting himself as a hero, was now the most hated person in America. But I wanted him to know something those reporters and angry social media users didn't. I wanted him to understand exactly how much of this was my doing, how his mother, locked in a maximum security prison, had orchestrated his total destruction using nothing but intelligence, patience, and a network of women the world had written off as worthless. I had Simone arrange a phone call. She used her investigator credentials to contact Travis, claiming she had information about who was behind his troubles. Travis took the call immediately, desperate for any explanation of how his life had fallen apart so completely. Mr. Bennet, Simone said, her voice professionally neutral, I've been investigating your situation on behalf of a client. I thought you should know who's been coordinating the campaign against you. Who? Travis asked, his voice cracking with stress and exhaustion. Your mother, Gloria Bennet, has been running this entire operation from prison. The financial investigation, the media coverage, the frozen accounts, all of it. She's been working with people on the outside and inside to systematically destroy everything you built on her back. There was silence on the line. Then Travis laughed, a desperate, broken sound. That's impossible. She's in prison. She's 75 years old. She doesn't have those kinds of resources or connections. She does now, Simone said. She spent 2 years building them, learning from women you'd never give a second thought to. And she's been very patient, very thorough. Everything that's happening to you right now, she planned it. She executed it. And she's not done. What else could she possibly take from me? Travis shouted, I've lost everything. Not everything, Simone said coldly. You still have your freedom. For now. But that's coming too. The evidence against you is overwhelming. Multiple agencies are building cases. You're going to prison, Mr. Bennet. And when you get there, you'll understand exactly what you put your mother through. Except, unlike her, you'll actually be guilty. She hung up. Jerome reported that Travis destroyed his motel room after that call, smashed the TV, punched holes in the walls, screamed until someone called the police. They didn't arrest him, but they did make him pay for the damages he couldn't afford. He had to move again, this time to an even cheaper place with no phone, no internet, no connection to the world. Inside prison, we celebrated quietly. I'd done what I set out to do. Travis had lost everything just like I had, but worse because he knew his own mother had done it to him. The betrayal he felt was a mirror of my own, and that symmetry satisfied something deep in my soul. But Brenda reminded me the job wasn't finished. He's broken, but he's not destroyed. And you're still in prison for his crimes. Real victory means you get out and he goes in. Anything less is incomplete revenge. She was right. I needed exoneration, not just vindication. I needed my freedom back. And I needed Travis to be the one in a cell, living the sentence he'd designed for me. The district attorney's review of my case took 3 months. During that time, more evidence emerged. The community center's current board cooperated fully, providing documents that showed the patterns of theft. Amanda testified about what she'd discovered and how Travis had reacted. Keisha, working with my lawyer, provided expert analysis of the financial records that proved I couldn't have committed the crimes. The forensic accountant's report was the final nail. It definitively showed that the theft patterns attributed to me were identical to Travis's current theft, and that both were committed by someone with insider knowledge of the center's financial systems. Someone like Travis, not someone like me. In January, nearly 2 years after my arrest, the district attorney held a press conference. After a thorough review of the evidence, we have concluded that Gloria Bennet was wrongfully convicted of crimes she did not commit. We are filing a motion to vacate her conviction and dismiss all charges. We will be seeking an indictment against Travis Bennet for the original theft, the subsequent theft, obstruction of justice, and perjury. I was released the next day. Pauline picked me up from prison. I walked out of those gates at 76 years old, 2 years older than when I'd gone in, but somehow stronger. Prison hadn't broken me. It had forged me into something harder, sharper, more dangerous. The media wanted interviews. Activists wanted me to speak about wrongful convictions. Lawyers wanted me to sue the city, the prosecutors, everyone involved in my conviction. I declined it all. I wasn't interested in being a symbol or a spokesperson. I just wanted to see my son go to prison. Travis was arrested that same day. They found him living in a homeless shelter, having lost even his cheap motel room. He'd sold everything he owned to pay for food. He was dirty, thin, defeated. The photographs of his arrest looked like a different person from the clean-cut, confident man who'd testified against me at my trial. His bail was set high, deliberately as high as mine had been. He couldn't make it. He went to county jail to await trial, the same jail where I'd spent 8 months. I wondered if he'd end up in the same cell, sleeping in the same bunk. staring at the same ceiling I'd stared at while planning his destruction. But I still wasn't satisfied. Travis in jail was justice, but it wasn't the ending I wanted. It wasn't enough for him to just lose and me to just win. I needed something more, something that would close this chapter completely. Rochelle, who'd been released 2 months before me, came to visit at Pauline's house. "You did it," she said, hugging me. "You took him down from inside a prison cell. That's legendary." "It doesn't feel finished," I admitted. "His going to prison. I'm free, but something's missing." "What's missing?" Brenda wrote to me in a letter, "is that you let the system finish him. You started the revenge, but you let lawyers and courts complete it. That's not cold revenge. That's justice. If you want real revenge, you need to do something that only you can do, something that shows him your power even now that you're free and he's caged." She was right. I needed one final move, something personal and devastating that would haunt Travis for the rest of his life. Something that would make him understand that even from prison, even when he was old and broken, he'd never escape what he'd done to me. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But what they don't tell you is that the coldest revenge is the kind that never ends. The kind that follows someone into their nightmares and sits beside them in their cell and whispers in their ear every single day that they will never, ever be free of what they've done. I was about to serve Travis the coldest dish he'd ever taste, and he was going to spend the rest of his life choking on it. Listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you, because this is where everything changes. Everything you've heard so far was just the setup. This is the payoff. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button right now, because you need to hear how this ends. Share this with everyone you know who thinks justice is something that only happens in courtrooms. I'm about to prove them wrong. Travis's trial was scheduled for March. He had a public defender, same as I'd had. The irony wasn't lost on me. His lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutors weren't interested. They wanted to make an example of Travis, the man who'd betrayed his own mother and stolen from the community's poorest children. I attended every day of jury selection. I sat in the front row where Travis could see me. I wanted him to look at me and remember what he'd done. I wanted him to see that I'd survived what he'd tried to do to me. I wanted him to know that I was there to witness his destruction the same way he'd witnessed mine. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution presented the evidence methodically, the stolen money, the cryptocurrency trails, the forged documents, the timeline that proved I couldn't have committed the original crimes. Amanda testified, her voice shaking with anger and pain as she described discovering the truth about the man she'd almost married. The defense had nothing. Travis's lawyer tried to argue that the evidence was circumstantial, that Travis had been set up just like I'd been. But the jury didn't buy it. The evidence was too clear, too overwhelming. And Travis's own testimony destroyed any remaining doubt. See, Travis made a fatal mistake. He took the stand. His lawyer advised against it, but Travis's ego wouldn't let him stay silent. He thought he could charm the jury like he charmed everyone else. He thought he could lie his way out of consequences one more time. He was wrong. The prosecutor demolished him. She went through every transaction, every forged signature, every lie he'd told. She showed him the medical records proving my alibi. She made him explain how his mother could have committed crimes while she was provably somewhere else. Travis fell apart on the stand. He started crying, claiming he'd been confused, that he'd made mistakes, that he'd really believed I was guilty. But when the prosecutor asked him why he'd stolen money after I was convicted, why he'd continued the same pattern of theft, he had no answer. He just kept crying and saying he was sorry. I watched him break and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, no connection to the child I'd raised. This stranger on the stand, sobbing and begging for sympathy, wasn't my son anymore. My son had died the day he decided to destroy me for money. The jury convicted him on all counts: embezzlement, fraud, money laundering, obstruction of justice, perjury. The sentencing hearing was set for 2 months later. But before that hearing, I enacted my final revenge. The move that Brenda had promised would haunt Travis forever. The thing only I could do. I visited him in jail. It was the first time we'd spoken since my arrest 3 years earlier. He looked terrible. Thin, pale, broken. He sat across from me in the visiting room and started to cry immediately. "Mama," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was desperate. I made mistakes. I held up my hand to stop him. "I'm not here for your apologies, Travis. I'm here to tell you something important. Something you need to understand for the rest of your life." He looked at me with desperate, hopeful eyes. Like maybe I was going to forgive him, tell him I still loved him, give him some kind of comfort. I smiled. A cold, hard smile that made him flinch. "I want you to know that every single thing that happened to you over the past year, I did. The investigation, the frozen accounts, the media attention, the evidence that convicted you. All of it. I orchestrated it from my prison cell using women you'd never even notice if you passed them on the street. Women the world thinks are worthless. And they helped me destroy you because they understood something you never learned." "What?" Travis whispered. "That the people you underestimate are the most dangerous. You thought sending me to prison would end me. A 75-year-old woman. What could I do? Everything, Travis. I could do everything. And I did." I leaned forward, my voice dropping low and venomous. "And here's what I want you to think about every single day for the rest of your life. When you're in your cell, when you're eating prison food, when you're counting the years until you might be free, I want you to remember that your mother did this to you. Not the police, not the prosecutors, not some random investigation. Me. I reached out from prison and took everything from you the same way you took everything from me. And I enjoyed it." Travis's face went white. "You're lying. You couldn't have." "I have receipts. Baby. Every phone call, every visitor, every move I made. I documented all of it. And after you're sentenced, I'm going to write a book about it. About how I took down my own son from a prison cell. About the women who helped me. About every detail of your destruction. And people are going to read it. They are going to know exactly what I did and how I did it. You're going to be famous, Travis. Not as the hero who exposed his criminal mother. As the idiot who underestimated his mother and paid the ultimate price." I stood up to leave. Travis grabbed my hand across the table. Desperate. "Please," he begged. "Please don't do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I pulled my hand away from his touch. "You should have thought about that before you destroyed me for money. Now you get to spend the next 20 years thinking about how your mama destroyed you for justice. Enjoy prison, baby." I know I did. I walked out of that visiting room and never looked back. I heard him screaming my name, begging me to come back, but I didn't turn around. He didn't deserve my attention anymore. He'd gotten exactly what he deserved. The sentencing hearing came in May. The judge gave Travis 25 years. Longer than my sentence had been. The judge said Travis's crimes were aggravated by the fact that he'd framed an innocent person, that he'd betrayed family bonds, that he'd shown no remorse until he was caught. "You had every opportunity to stop," the judge told Travis. "You could have confessed when your mother was arrested. You could have told the truth at her trial. You could have stopped stealing once she was in prison. Instead, you chose to continue benefiting from her destruction. The court finds your conduct to be among the most morally reprehensible it has seen. 25 years in state prison." Travis collapsed. They had to carry him out of the courtroom. I watched with the same cold satisfaction I'd felt throughout this whole process. Not joy, exactly. Just the deep sense that balance had been restored to the universe. But I still had one more thing to do. The thing that would ensure Travis never forgot, never escaped, never found peace. I spent the next 6 months writing. Every detail of how I'd orchestrated Travis's destruction from prison. I named names, described methods, explained the psychology behind each move. I wrote about Rochelle, Tamika, Keisha, Nicole, Brenda. I wrote about Jerome and Simone and Destiny. I wrote about Pauline, my sister who'd been my lifeline to the outside world. And I wrote about Travis, not as my son, but as a case study in arrogance, greed, and the fatal mistake of underestimating people you think are powerless. The book was published in November, 8 months after Travis's sentencing. I called it The Long Revenge: How I Destroyed My Son from Prison. The cover was a photo of me leaving prison the day of my release, with a quote underneath, "He sent me to die in a cage. I sent him to live in one." It became a bestseller immediately. People couldn't get enough of the story. A mother wrongfully imprisoned by her son, who then systematically dismantled his life from behind bars using an army of incarcerated women. It was revenge, true crime, social commentary, and inspiration all rolled into one. The media coverage was intense. I did interviews with major networks, podcasts, newspapers. Everyone wanted to know how I'd done it, why I'd done it, whether I regretted being so ruthless with my own child. I don't regret it for a second, I told one interviewer. Travis made a choice when he framed me. He chose money over family, lies over truth, comfort over conscience. I just made sure he faced consequences for those choices. If that makes me ruthless, then I'm ruthless. But I call it justice. The book's success brought opportunities I'd never imagined. Production companies wanted to make it into a movie. Publishers wanted me to write more. Universities invited me to speak about wrongful convictions, the prison system, the power of patience and planning. But the most satisfying response came from incarcerated women across the country. I started getting letters from prisons in every state. Women telling me my story had given them hope. Women who'd been betrayed by family, by the system, by society, who now understood they weren't powerless. They had intelligence, determination, and time to plan. Just like I'd had. I wrote back to every single one. I told them their power wasn't in violence or drama. It was in patience, observation, and understanding that revenge doesn't have to be instant to be complete. Rochelle was released a year after my book came out. We met for coffee in my city. 2 women who'd once been cellmates and were now friends bound by a shared understanding of what it meant to survive and overcome. "You really did it," she said, shaking her head in admiration. "You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into power. That's rare." "I had good teachers," I said, thinking of all the women who'd helped me. "You, Tamika, Keisha, Nicole, Brenda. You all taught me that prison doesn't make you powerless. It just changes what kinds of power you have access to." "What are you going to do now?" Rochelle asked. "You're famous, you're wealthy from the book sales, you've got your freedom back. What's next for Gloria Bennet?" I'd been thinking about that. I had money now, more than I'd ever had in my life. I had a platform. I had influence. I could do anything. "I'm going to help other people like me," I said. Women who've been wrongfully convicted. People who've been betrayed by family or the system. I'm going to use what I learned to help them get justice when the courts won't give it to them. I created a foundation, but not the typical nonprofit kind. This was something different. I called it the Silent Justice Project. We helped wrongfully convicted people, especially women, investigate their own cases. We connected them with resources, taught them strategy, gave them the tools to fight back against the systems that had failed them. We didn't work within the legal system. We worked around it, through it, sometimes against it. We used investigation, media pressure, public campaigns, whatever it took to force the truth into the light. We were aggressive, relentless, and completely unapologetic about our methods. The foundation became my life's work. Every case we won, every person we freed, every corrupt official or lying family member we exposed, it all felt like an extension of what I'd done to Travis. Proof that powerless people aren't actually powerless. They just need to understand how power really works. Travis heard about all of this from prison. Inmates told me he'd read my book, that it had destroyed him emotionally more than the prison sentence itself. knowing that everyone could read exactly how his mother had orchestrated his downfall, that I'd made money and fame from his destruction, that I'd turned his worst nightmare into my greatest triumph. He wrote me letters begging me to stop, to take the book out of print, to stop doing interviews, to let him fade into obscurity. I never responded. He'd made me famous as the criminal mother. I'd made him infamous as the son who got destroyed by that same mother. Fair trade. Years passed. I turned 80. Travis was still in prison, with 15 years left on his sentence. I was healthy, active, surrounded by people who respected and admired me. The foundation had helped free dozens of wrongfully convicted people. My book was taught in criminal justice courses as an example of how the system could fail and how individuals could seek their own justice. But I wanted one more conversation with Travis. One final word before I got too old to say it. I visited him on his 40th birthday. He'd spent his entire 30s in prison. He looked older than his years, gray hair, tired eyes, the slump of someone who'd given up on hope. "Why are you here?" he asked me dully. "To tell you that I forgive you," I said. He looked up, shocked. "What?" "I forgive you for framing me, for stealing, for lying, for trying to destroy me. I forgive all of it." Tears filled his eyes. "Mama, I held up my hand. "Let me finish. I forgive you because holding on to hatred is exhausting, and I'm 80 years old. I don't have energy to waste on hating you anymore. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean we're family again. It doesn't mean I regret what I did to you. It just means I'm choosing peace for myself, not for you." "Can we ever?" Travis started. "No," I said firmly. "We can't ever be mother and son again. You killed that relationship when you sent me to prison. What we are now is two people who share DNA and a history. That's all. I'll never visit you again after today. I'll never write to you. I'll never acknowledge you as my son to anyone who asks. You made your choices. You live with the consequences, just like I had to live with mine." I stood to leave. Travis started crying, that same desperate crying from his trial. Was it worth it? I asked him. The money, the lifestyle, the brief years of comfort? Was it worth losing your mother, your freedom, your entire life? He couldn't answer through the tears. "I didn't think so," I said. "Goodbye, Travis. I hope you find some kind of peace in here. But you'll never find forgiveness from me again. This was it. Your one chance. And I only gave it to you for me, not for you." I walked out of that prison for the last time. I never looked back. The years after my final visit with Travis were the most peaceful of my life. I'd spent 7 decades struggling, fighting, surviving. 2 years in prison planning revenge. 3 years executing it and rebuilding my life. Now, finally, I could just exist without the weight of betrayal crushing me. The Silent Justice Project grew beyond anything I'd imagined. We had offices in 12 cities, a staff of 30 people, and a network of volunteer investigators who helped us work cases. We'd helped exonerate 43 wrongfully convicted people in 5 years. Each one felt like a small victory against the system that had failed me. I made friends with other exonerees, people who understood what it meant to lose years of your life to false accusations. We formed a community, a family of people who'd been through hell and came out harder on the other side. We supported each other, celebrated our victories, mourned our losses. One of those friends was a woman named Jasmine. She'd spent 18 years in prison for a murder her boyfriend had committed. She'd been 20 when she went in, 38 when she got out. Her entire youth had been stolen from her. How do you not hate everyone? I asked her once over dinner. Jasmine smiled sadly. "Oh, I hate plenty of people. The prosecutor who buried evidence. The boyfriend who let me take his fall. The jury who didn't question the inconsistencies. But I can't live in that hate. It would eat me alive. So I choose specific targets for my anger and let the rest go." That resonated with me. I'd been so focused on Travis, on making him pay, that I'd channeled all my anger into one specific revenge. It had worked. It had saved my sanity. But Jasmine was right. You couldn't hate everyone who'd failed you. You'd drown in it. I thought about all the people involved in my wrongful conviction. The police who'd been too quick to believe Travis. The prosecutor who'd relied on manufactured evidence without digging deeper. The jury who'd trusted a crying son over a silent mother. My public defender who'd been too overwhelmed to mount a real defense. I didn't forgive them, but I didn't hunt them either. Travis had been the architect of my destruction. The others were just tools he'd used. Punishing them wouldn't have satisfied the specific betrayal I'd felt. Only Travis's destruction could do that. But I did use my platform to push for reforms. I testified before legislative committees about the need for better forensic accounting in fraud cases. I wrote op-eds about how easily family members could manipulate investigations. I spoke at law schools about the importance of thorough defense work even for clients who seemed obviously guilty. Some people criticized me for being too focused on revenge in my book and not enough on systemic change. They said I should have spent my energy fighting the system that had failed me, not destroying my son. I understood their point, but I didn't agree with it. The system failed me because of what my son did, I explained in one interview. You can't separate the two. Yes, we need better safeguards. Yes, we need reforms. But we also need consequences for people who weaponize the justice system against their own family. Travis knew exactly what he was doing. He studied how to frame me, how to make it look convincing, how to use his relationship with me as a shield for his crimes. That's not a system failure. That's individual evil. And it deserved an individual response. The interviewer had pushed back. But isn't revenge just another form of injustice? An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind, as they say. I'd smiled at that old cliché. An eye for an eye doesn't leave the world blind. It leaves the world with consequences for taking eyes. Travis took my freedom, my reputation, my years. I took his in return. That's not injustice. That's balance. And sometimes balance requires someone to act when the system won't. That interview went viral. People either loved or hated my perspective. There was no middle ground. Some called me a hero, an inspiration, proof that you could fight back against betrayal and win. Others called me vindictive, cruel, no better than the son who'd framed me. I didn't care about either characterization. I knew what I'd done and why. I'd lived it, planned it, executed it. Other people's opinions couldn't change the satisfaction I felt when I thought about Travis in his cell, living the sentence he designed for me. Pauline worried about me sometimes. Are you happy, Gloria? She asked during one of our weekly dinners. Really happy, not just satisfied with revenge. It was a good question. Was I happy? I had to think about it. I'm content, I finally said. I wake up every morning free. I do work that matters. I have friends, resources, purpose. That's more than I had before Travis framed me. More than I had during those 2 years in prison. So yes, I'm happy. Maybe not the carefree happiness of someone who's never been betrayed, but the deeper happiness of someone who's survived betrayal and came out stronger. Pauline squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, sister. What you did was controversial, maybe even morally questionable to some people. But it was also powerful and necessary. Travis needed to face consequences. The courts were going to give him that eventually, but you made sure those consequences really meant something. I appreciated her support. Pauline had never wavered, never questioned whether I was going too far. She'd helped me when I needed help, trusted me when my plans seemed crazy, celebrated with me when they worked. She was the family Travis should have been. As I moved through my 80s, I started thinking about legacy. What did I want to be remembered for? The wrongfully convicted mother, the woman who destroyed her son, the founder of the Silent Justice Project. All of it felt incomplete somehow. I decided to write a second book. Not about Travis this time, but about all the women who'd helped me. Rochelle, Tamika, Keisha, Nicole, Brenda. The incarcerated women who'd taught me that powerlessness is an illusion, that intelligence and patience can overcome almost any obstacle. I interviewed them all, the ones who'd been released. I corresponded with the ones still inside. I told their stories with their permission, showing how each of them had survived their own betrayals and injustices. How they'd maintained their humanity in a system designed to dehumanize them. The book was called Concrete Flowers, Women Who Bloom Behind Bars. It sold well, though not as well as my revenge memoir. But it mattered more to me. It showed that my story wasn't just about one old woman taking down her son. It was about a community of women supporting each other, teaching each other, empowering each other. Brenda, who was still serving life, wrote me after reading it. You told our stories with respect and truth. Thank you for that. Thank you for remembering that we're more than our worst mistakes, that even in here, we have value and power and wisdom to share. Her letter made me cry, not sad tears, but grateful ones. I'd been so focused on my own pain and revenge that I hadn't fully appreciated what those women had given me. Not just tools for destroying Travis, but examples of strength, resilience, and dignity in impossible circumstances. I started a mentorship program at the Silent Justice Project. We connected formerly incarcerated women with people fighting wrongful convictions. The women became investigators, advocates, strategists. They used the skills they'd learned in prison to help others seek justice. It was beautiful and fitting. Travis would have hated knowing that his betrayal had led to something positive, something that helped people. That added another layer of satisfaction to my revenge. Not only had I destroyed him, but I'd turned my destruction into creation. I'd built something meaningful from the ashes of our relationship. I never spoke his name publicly after that last visit. Interviewers would ask about him, about whether I'd heard from him, whether we'd reconciled. I'd simply say, I have no son, and change the subject. It became my standard response. Firm, final, unmovable. People respected that boundary eventually. The story became less about Travis and more about me, about what I'd accomplished, the people I'd helped, the systems I was trying to change. He faded into the background of my narrative, which is exactly what he deserved. On my 85th birthday, the Silent Justice Project threw me a celebration. 50 people attended, including 20 exonerees we'd helped. They shared stories about how our work had changed their lives, how the foundation had given them hope when the legal system had given them nothing. One woman, named Lauren, had spent 12 years in prison for a crime her employer had committed. We'd helped her prove her innocence and get released. She stood up during the celebration and said, Gloria taught me that being wronged doesn't make you weak. It can make you strategic. It can give you purpose. It can transform you from a victim into a force for change. She's my hero. I looked around that room at all those faces, people who'd been through hell and survived, people who'd lost years, decades, entire lifetimes to false accusations and systemic failures, people who were now free and fighting to help others find freedom. This was my legacy, not the revenge against Travis, though that would always be part of my story. But this community, this movement, this proof that wronged people could become warriors for justice. Pauline leaned over and whispered, Look what you built, Gloria. Look at all these lives you've touched. I smiled, a real smile this time, not the cold one I'd given Travis in that visiting room. We built it together, I said. None of this happens without you, without the women in prison, without everyone who believed me when the world called me a criminal. That night, alone in my apartment, I thought about forgiveness again. I'd told Travis I forgave him, but I'd meant it only in the sense of releasing my own hatred. I'd never forgiven what he did. I'd never forget it. I'd never consider him family again. But I realized I didn't need to. Forgiveness isn't required for peace. Sometimes the best you can do is acknowledge that someone hurt you, make them face consequences, and then move forward without them. That's what I'd done. That's what worked for me. Travis had 15 more years on his sentence. He'd be 55 when he got out, if he lived that long. I'd be 95 if I lived that long. Statistically, I probably wouldn't. I'd die before seeing him released. Part of me liked that. It meant I'd never have to deal with him trying to re-enter my life, trying to apologize again, trying to pretend we could be family. He'd live out his sentence knowing his mother had destroyed him and then moved on without him, that she'd built a successful, meaningful life while he rotted in a cell, that she was loved and respected while he was forgotten and dismissed. That was cold revenge. The kind that kept giving long after the initial blow. The kind that would follow him forever. And I'd earned it. Every single bit of it. At 8 or 7, I got a letter that changed everything. It wasn't from Travis. It was from a woman named Monica, who identified herself as his daughter. My granddaughter. A child I'd never known existed. The letter was carefully written, respectful but direct. Monica explained that she was 23 years old, that her mother had dated Travis briefly when she was in college. She'd gotten pregnant, and Travis had demanded she get an abortion. She'd refused. He'd cut off all contact and denied paternity. Monica's mother had raised her alone, never pursuing Travis for child support or acknowledgement. But when Travis's trial had been all over the news, when my book had become a bestseller, Monica had learned who her father really was. She'd read everything, watched every interview, studied the whole story. I need you to know, Monica wrote, that I'm not reaching out because I want anything from you. I don't need money or family or anything like that. I just wanted you to know that I exist. That Travis's betrayal of you isn't his only crime. He abandoned me before I was even born. He's been a coward and a liar his entire life. And I wanted you to know that at least one person who shares his blood isn't like him. The letter included a photo. Monica looked like Travis had looked at her age. The same eyes, the same smile. But there was something different in her expression. Strength, maybe. Integrity. Things Travis had never really had. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to protect myself from any connection to Travis's legacy. But another part of me was curious. This young woman had done nothing wrong. She'd been rejected by her father before she was even born. Did she deserve to be rejected by her grandmother too? I decided to write back. I kept it brief, neutral, not committing to anything. Dear Monica, thank you for your letter. I was surprised to learn of your existence, but I believe you when you say Travis abandoned you. That's consistent with who he is. I'm willing to meet with you if you'd like, but I want to be clear that I make no promises about what kind of relationship we might have. I need to protect myself from any more pain connected to Travis. But you deserve the opportunity to be known as yourself, not as his child. If you want to meet, let me know. Gloria. Monica responded immediately. She lived 3 states away but said she'd be willing to travel. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in my city the following month. I was nervous leading up to that meeting. What if Monica was like Travis? What if this was some kind of scheme? What if she blamed me for destroying her father, even though he'd destroyed me first? Pauline came with me for support. We arrived early and sat in the corner, watching the door. When Monica walked in, I recognized her immediately from the photo. She was tall, confident, dressed professionally. She looked around, spotted me, and smiled hesitantly. Mrs. Bennet, she said, approaching our table. Call me Gloria, I said, standing to shake her hand. This is my sister Pauline. We all sat down. There was an awkward silence. Then Monica said, I practiced what I was going to say on the drive here, but now I don't know where to start. Start wherever feels right, I said gently. Monica took a breath. I grew up knowing my father had rejected me. My mom never hid that, but she also never told me his name or anything about him. She said it was better for me not to know. When I turned 18, I started searching. It took me 3 years to find him. And when I did, I found out he was in prison for framing his own mother and stealing from a children's charity. She laughed, a bitter sound. I thought, of course. Of course my father is a criminal who betrayed his own parent. That tracks with abandoning his own child. So I read everything about the case. I bought your book. I watched your interviews. And I realized something. What? I asked. You're who I wish my mother had been. Strong. Strategic. Unwilling to let someone destroy you without consequences. My mom just accepted Travis's rejection. She never fought for child support, never exposed him as a deadbeat, never sought any kind of justice. She just survived. But you didn't just survive. You won. I didn't know what to say to that. Monica continued, I'm not here to ask you to be my grandmother in any traditional sense. I know that's probably too much, too complicated. But I wanted to meet you. I wanted you to know that Travis's bloodline doesn't end with just him and his crimes. There's me too, and I'm going to live my life in a way that proves genetics aren't destiny. Pauline squeezed my hand under the table. I looked at this young woman, this stranger who carried Travis's DNA but none of his moral rot. She deserved better than what he'd given her, which was nothing. What do you do, Monica? I asked. I'm a social worker. I help kids in foster care, kids who've been abandoned or abused by their parents. I guess I'm trying to be for them what I wish someone had been for me. Of course she was. Of course she'd taken her pain and turned it into purpose, just like I had. Maybe genetics did matter, but not in the way Travis would have thought. Maybe what she'd inherited from our family wasn't his capacity for betrayal, but my capacity for turning suffering into strength. We talked for 3 hours that day. Monica told me about her childhood, her mother who'd passed away 2 years earlier from cancer, her education, her work. I told her about the Silent Justice Project, about my life before and after prison, about everything except the specific details of how I'd destroyed her father. I know what you did to him, Monica said eventually. I read the book. Some people think you went too far. But I think you showed him the exact mercy he showed you, which is to say, none. Do you resent me for it? I asked. He's your father, even if he rejected you. Monica shook her head firmly. He's not my father in any meaningful sense. He's a sperm donor who refused to acknowledge my existence. What you did to him has nothing to do with me. If anything, I'm grateful you exposed him. Now everyone knows what kind of person he really is, including me. We arranged to stay in touch. Nothing formal, no pressure, just occasional emails and maybe visits when she was in town. It felt right, appropriate, healthy. Over the next 2 years, Monica and I developed a relationship. Not grandmother-granddaughter in the traditional sense, but something else. Mutual respect, shared understanding. A connection based on who we were as individuals, not on family obligation. She started volunteering with the Silent Justice Project. She had skills we needed, and she found the work meaningful. Watching her help exonerees navigate the social services system, seeing her advocate for wrongfully convicted people with the same fierce determination I'd seen in myself, I felt something unexpected. Pride. Not in Travis, never in Travis. But in this young woman who'd overcome his rejection and built something beautiful from it. Monica never visited Travis in prison. She had no interest in confronting him or seeking his acknowledgement. He made his choice before I was born, she said. I'm not going to waste my time trying to get something from someone who has nothing valuable to give me. Wise beyond her years. Stronger than I'd been at her age. I'd spent decades trying to be enough for Travis, working multiple jobs to give him opportunities, sacrificing my own needs for his future. And he'd repaid me with betrayal. Monica's mother had done something similar, and Travis had repaid her with abandonment. But Monica had learned from that. She didn't seek validation from people who'd proven themselves unworthy of giving it. She just moved forward, creating her own meaning and purpose. One day, she asked me, do you think people can change? Like, fundamentally change who they are? I thought about Travis, about whether he'd changed in prison, whether his suffering had transformed him into someone different. I think people can change their circumstances, their behaviors, their understanding of consequences, I said carefully. But I don't think they change their fundamental nature. Travis was always selfish, even as a child. Prison didn't make him selfish. It just revealed what was already there. He's probably different now than he was before, but I don't think he's fundamentally changed. He's just a selfish person who's learned that selfishness has costs. Monica nodded thoughtfully. I used to wonder if I was like him, if I carried his selfishness, his capacity for betrayal. But my therapist helped me understand that I'm not defined by what I inherited. I'm defined by what I choose to do with it. Smart woman, her therapist. You're nothing like him, I assured Monica. You're what he could have been if he'd made different choices. That's what makes you valuable, special, worth knowing. She smiled at that. Thank you, Gloria, for seeing me as me, not just as his daughter. Thank you for being worth seeing, I replied. Having Monica in my life added a dimension I hadn't expected. She represented hope, redemption, the possibility that Travis's legacy wasn't entirely poisonous. She was proof that even from his moral failure, something good could emerge. I never told Travis about her outreach to me. He didn't deserve to know. He'd rejected her when she was barely a concept, not even a person yet. He didn't get to take credit for who she'd become without him. She was her mother's daughter, her own person, and increasingly, my friend and ally in the work of justice. On my 89th birthday, Monica gave me a gift. It was a framed photo of the two of us at a Silent Justice Project event, standing with 3 exonerees we'd recently helped free. We were all smiling, genuinely happy. I wanted you to have this, Monica said, so you could remember that your legacy isn't about Travis or revenge. It's about this. The lives you've changed. The people you've helped. The family you've built from choice, not obligation. I hung that photo in my office. Every time I looked at it, I felt the same thing. Not satisfaction about Travis's destruction, though that was still there, but something bigger, deeper, more meaningful. Purpose, community, legacy. Travis had tried to erase me from the world. Instead, he'd given me the motivation to make my mark on it in ways I never would have imagined. And that, more than his suffering in prison, was my real revenge. He'd meant to end me. Instead, he'd unleashed me. I celebrated my 90th birthday surrounded by people I'd chosen to be my family. Monica was there, along with Pauline, Rochelle, several formerly incarcerated women who'd helped me, and dozens of exonerees from the Silent Justice Project. We gathered at a community center, appropriately enough, though not the one Travis had stolen from. The party was joyful, full of laughter and stories. People shared how the foundation had changed their lives, how my story had inspired them to keep fighting when the system failed them. A woman named Tasha, who had helped exonerate after 14 years, gave a speech that made everyone cry. Gloria taught us that justice doesn't always come from judges or juries, Tasha said. Sometimes it comes from refusing to let injustice define you, from using your pain as fuel instead of letting it consume you, from building something beautiful out of something broken. She turned her wrongful conviction into a movement, her betrayal into a legacy, and all of us in this room are part of that legacy. I looked around at these faces, these beautiful, strong, resilient people. We'd all been broken by the system, by family, by circumstances beyond our control. But we'd put ourselves back together, and we'd helped others do the same. That was power. That was victory. That was everything Travis had tried to take from me and failed. After the party, Monica drove me home. We sat in my living room drinking tea, and she asked the question I'd been expecting for years. Have you ever regretted it? What you did to him? I didn't have to ask who him was. There was only one him that mattered in this context. No, I said honestly. I've questioned whether I could have done some things differently, more efficiently, with less risk. But regret? Never. Travis made a deliberate choice to destroy me. He researched how to frame me. He created false evidence. He testified against me under oath, crying fake tears. He watched me go to prison and then stole more money, living well off my destroyed reputation. Every single step of his destruction was calculated. My response was just as calculated. Why would I regret matching his energy? Monica nodded. People who've never been betrayed like that don't understand. They think you should have been the bigger person, forgiven him, let the legal system handle it. But they weren't the ones in a cage for crimes they didn't commit. They weren't the ones who watched their own child lie them into prison. They don't get a vote on how you responded. Exactly, I said. And here's the thing people miss. I did let the legal system handle it eventually. Travis is in prison because he was convicted by a jury in a court of law. I just made sure that conviction happened by exposing the truth he'd buried. Everything I did was about revealing what he'd hidden, not creating lies about him. His destruction came from his own actions being brought into the light. That's not revenge. That's consequences. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Monica said, I got a letter from him last month. My stomach tightened. Travis wrote to you. Yeah. Someone must have told him I'd made contact with you. He wanted to explain himself, to tell his side of the story, to ask me to help him get parole. What did you do? Monica smiled. I returned it unopened with a note that said, You rejected me before I was born. I'm returning the favor now. Don't write again. Then I blocked his prisoner number from being able to send me anything else. I laughed, genuinely laughed. Good for you. You don't owe him anything. I learned from the best, Monica said, raising her teacup to me. A few months after my birthday, I received notice that Travis was up for parole. He'd served 12 years of his 25-year sentence. His behavior in prison had apparently been good. He'd taken classes, worked in the library, stayed out of trouble. The parole board would decide whether to release him early. I was invited to submit a statement about whether I supported his parole. I declined. Not because I didn't have opinions, but because my opinion didn't matter. Travis's release or continued incarceration wasn't about me anymore. It was about whether he was safe to return to society. The parole board could make that decision without my input. Pauline asked if I wanted to know the outcome of the hearing. I thought about it and decided yes, I did want to know, but only the result, not the details. Travis was denied parole. The board cited the severity of his crimes, particularly the framing of an innocent person, as requiring he serve more of his sentence. He could apply again in 3 years. When Pauline told me, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no disappointment, no emotion at all. Travis's presence or absence from prison didn't affect my life anymore. He was just a person who'd once hurt me and then faced consequences. What happened to him now was irrelevant to my peace. That realization was its own kind of freedom. For years, I'd been defined by what Travis did to me and what I did to him in return. Now I was defined by what I built after all of that. The foundation, the exonerees, the community, Monica, these were my identity now. Travis was just a footnote in my story, not the main chapter. I started having health problems that year. Nothing dramatic, just the normal decline of a 90-year-old body. My heart wasn't as strong. My joints hurt. I got tired more easily. I knew my time was limited, and I wanted to make sure everything was in order. I worked with lawyers to ensure the Silent Justice Project would continue after my death. Monica agreed to take over as director. She had the passion, the skills, and the understanding of what the work meant. The foundation would be in good hands. I also wrote letters to all the people who'd helped me over the years. Rochelle, Tamika, Keisha, Nicole, Brenda. Some were still incarcerated. Others had been released. I thanked them for teaching me, for supporting me, for showing me that strength comes in forms society doesn't recognize or value. Brenda wrote back, You gave us something to, Gloria. You proved that age doesn't make you powerless, that being underestimated is an advantage, that patience and planning beat youth and strength every time. You're a legend in Hay. Women tell your story to new inmates as proof that you can fight back and win. Thank you for that. Her letter made me cry, happy tears this time. I'd wanted revenge on Travis, but I'd given something to these women too. Hope. Strategy. Proof that the system could be beaten if you were smart and patient enough. I thought about writing Travis one final letter. Not to gloat or hurt him, but to close the circle completely. But I decided against it. Everything that needed to be said had been said. He knew what he'd done. He knew what I'd done in response. He knew he'd lost. There was nothing left to communicate. Instead, I wrote a letter to myself. A final accounting of what this whole journey had meant, what I'd learned, who I'd become. Dear Gloria, I wrote, you survived. That was the first victory. You didn't break when Travis sent you to prison. You didn't give up when the system failed you. You didn't accept injustice as inevitable. You fought back with the only weapons you had, intelligence, patience, and connections built in the darkest place. You won. Not just against Travis, but against the narrative that older women are powerless, that wrongfully convicted people have no recourse, that betrayal has to destroy you. You won, and you built something beautiful from that victory. Be proud. You've earned it. I sealed that letter and gave it to Pauline with instructions to open it after my death and share it with Monica and the Foundation. I wanted them to know that I'd died satisfied, complete, at peace with everything I'd done. At 91, I gave my last public speech at a conference on wrongful convictions. I was frail by then, needing a cane to walk, but my mind was still sharp. I spoke to a room of lawyers, activists, exonerees, and families of incarcerated people. People ask me if revenge was worth it, I said from the podium. They ask if I regret spending so much energy destroying my son instead of just moving forward with my life. And I tell them this, moving forward was the revenge. Building the Silent Justice Project was the revenge. Helping other wrongly convicted people was the revenge. Living well, freely, purposefully while Travis rotted in a cell was the revenge. The specific acts of exposing him, bankrupting him, humiliating him, those were just tactics. The real revenge was proving that he didn't break me, that I could take the worst thing he did to me and transform it into the best thing I did with my life. That's power. That's victory. That's the revenge that matters. The audience gave me a standing ovation. I looked out at all those faces, people fighting for justice in their own ways, and I felt complete. My story was ending, but the work would continue. The legacy would outlive me. That was the ending I deserved. Not death in a prison cell like Travis had intended. Not quiet obscurity. But this, surrounded by people I'd helped and who'd helped me, knowing my work would continue, having transformed my greatest betrayal into my greatest contribution. Travis would die in prison or out of it, alone or surrounded by people who'd never really known him. Either way, he'd die knowing he'd created his own destruction by underestimating the woman who gave him life. That knowledge would haunt him forever, and I would die knowing I'd won completely, totally, in every way that mattered. On my 92nd birthday, I was too ill to attend the Foundation's annual gala. Monica brought the celebration to me, setting up a video call so I could watch from my hospital bed. Exonerees shared their stories. Staff members announced our statistics for the year: 63 wrongful convictions overturned, hundreds of cases under investigation. Thousands of people helped with legal resources and support. This is Gloria's legacy, Monica said to the camera, her voice thick with emotion. Every person in this room, every case we've won, every family we've reunited, it all traces back to a 75-year-old woman who refused to let betrayal define her, who turned pain into power, who showed us all that it's never too late to fight back, to demand justice, to build something meaningful from suffering. I watched through tears, overwhelmed with gratitude. This was better than any revenge. This was immortality. Not through blood. Travis had proven blood meant nothing. But through impact, through the lives changed and the systems challenged and the people empowered. I died 3 months later, peacefully, in my sleep. I was 92 years old. I'd outlived my wrongful conviction, my prison sentence, and my revenge. I'd built a foundation that would continue long after me. I'd connected with a granddaughter I'd never expected to have. I'd helped free dozens of innocent people. And most importantly, I'd won. Completely, totally, undeniably. My obituary ran in newspapers across the country. They called me a fighter, an advocate, a survivor. They mentioned my wrongful conviction and exoneration. They detailed the Silent Justice Project's accomplishments. They quoted from my books. Travis wasn't mentioned until the final paragraph, and only in passing. She is survived by no immediate family. Her son, Travis Bennet, is currently incarcerated. Perfect. Even in death, I got the last word. He was relegated to a footnote, an afterthought, a single sentence in a story that was really about me and what I'd accomplished. Monica spoke at my funeral. The church was packed with people whose lives I'd touched. Exonerees, activists, formerly incarcerated women, foundation staff, people I'd helped and who'd helped me. Gloria taught me that family is what you build, not what you're born into, Monica said through tears. She could have rejected me because of who my father was. Instead, she saw me as my own person and gave me the opportunity to be part of something larger than myself. She did that for everyone in this room. She saw us not as victims or statistics or cases, but as people with power and purpose and potential. And she helped us see that in ourselves. They buried me next to Pauline, who'd passed a year before me. My headstone was simple, Gloria Bennet. She survived. She fought. She won. No mention of being a mother. No mention of Travis. Just the truth of who I'd become and what I'd accomplished. Travis got news of my death in prison. I'd left instructions with my lawyer that he was not to be allowed to attend my funeral or memorial service. He was not to receive any of my estate, which was going entirely to the Silent Justice Project. He was not to be given any of my personal effects or papers. He was erased from my legacy as completely as he tried to erase me from freedom. According to reports, he broke down when he heard. He apparently expected that my death would somehow free him from the consequences of what he'd done. That with me gone, people would forget, forgive, move on. But the foundation kept operating. The book kept selling. The story kept being told. My impact continued, growing even larger without me there to limit it to my lifetime. Travis's hope for obscurity died with me, replaced by the reality that he'd always be known as the man who betrayed Gloria Bennet and paid for it. That was my final revenge. Not my death, but my immortality. Not his freedom, but his eternal association with his worst act. Not forgiveness, but permanent consequence. I'd promised him in that prison visiting room that he'd never escape what he'd done to me. I'd kept that promise. Even from beyond the grave, I was still winning. Because revenge isn't just about the immediate pain you cause someone. It's about building something that outlasts both of you. Something that ensures they can never rewrite the narrative, never escape the truth, never be free of the consequences even when you're gone. I built that. And it was beautiful. The Silent Justice Project still operates today, 20 years after my death. They've freed hundreds of wrongfully convicted people. They've trained thousands of advocates. They've changed laws and policies. They've given hope to people who had none. And every person they helped learns the story of Gloria Bennet, the woman who was betrayed by her son, survived prison, destroyed her betrayer, and built a legacy that transformed suffering into justice. That's the ending I deserved. Not just revenge, but redemption. Not just victory, but meaning. Not just survival, but triumph. And Travis, he served every single day of his 25-year sentence. Parole was denied 3 more times. He was released at 65, broken, forgotten, with nothing and no one waiting for him. He lived alone for 7 years before dying of a heart attack in a subsidized apartment, unmourned and unremarked. His obituary was 2 sentences long. It didn't mention me, the community center, or anything he'd done. Just his name, dates, and that he died without survivors. Perfect. He tried to erase me and instead erased himself. While I became legendary, he became nothing. That's what cold revenge looks like. That's what complete victory feels like. That's what you get when you underestimate a 75-year-old woman who has nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. I won. Completely. Finally. Forever. And he lost the same way. Justice served cold.